All right, my name is Richie. I'm joined by Rhett, who is one of the executives behind UNIFY.
Yeah, about one of the 300 people that helped make this thing actually work. So yeah, my name's Rhett.
And we have a bona fide rock star. We have Dale from Ocean Grove. G'day, how we doing? And we have Kate from Sea Shepherd. So it's a really wonderful panel. We're going to be talking. What are we going to talk about? We're talking about environmentalism, we're going to talk about sustainability, we're going to be talking about protecting our oceans, what you guys do, how we do it, and what you can do, and how you can be part of this process of healing and change that we need for the Earth. So, Rhett, you've really made an effort with UNIFY to make it a sustainable, low-waste festival. Do you want to talk us, maybe talk about the inspiration, like what started that process?
Yeah, I think starting festivals, been running festivals quite a long time, but when we started UNIFY, it was the largest festival that I'd run at scale. Went back at the Footy Oval. Anyone went to the Footy Oval shows? 2015, 16, 17, 18. And I think when you go to scale at a festival, the actual sheer volume of waste produced is quite shocking. And just to get you guys some context, I think it was the 2016 year, we actually put 26 tons of waste to landfill. And the team and I were like, fuck, we got to do something. We don't want to be that festival. And we just then worked really stringently on how can we start to change, one, the perception of ourselves and how we view waste coming onto the site and off the site, and then what processes can we put in place, and also around language. We made a conscious effort to change through the support of Be Alternative. Give it up for Be Alternative, our waste management team. You'll see them running around, help them where you can. But through working with them and the language, we just started to turn general waste into landfill. So the red bins became landfill instead of general waste, because general you're kind of like whatever, but when you walk to a bin and you're like landfill, oh, that's actually going to a big pit and it's just going to fester there and not be used. And we changed our bin stations from being bin stations to resource recovery stations. So it just started the mental change, I guess, for us, and then
it's kind of like bringing in awareness to what's actually happening. Like a lot of language, like obfuscates the reality, right? Like it really hides things. So I think that's a really nice strategy.
Yeah, and then I guess it's then looking at, okay, what streams are coming onto site and how can we get them off site and make sure they're going to the right places. And that you'll see our bin stations around. They're all split now. The can return process was one that helps us clean the site. Many hands make light work, but what that does is clean waste is very easy now, or becoming easier to actually make sure it does get reprocessed and repurposed.
When we're talking about environmentalism, people often say it makes things more expensive to be environmentally conscious. Is that true?
Well, in our case, because we've gone from putting 26, well, finally the government and tips are starting to charge a lot more for landfill. So for instance, we were paying $150 a tonne to go to landfill. Now that's $280 a tonne. So just for us to actually, there's that financial benefit for us to going, all right, let's work together and divert as much from landfill as possible. One, it's almost getting to par, which is good. So there is an extra cost to get a skip just for aluminium and a skip just for certain things. But if you can start to offset it by the cost of landfill versus making sure it goes, and then there's the good feel factor of just making sure like we end up sending, I think there's about 8 different skips to different places now. So it's really, it feels good to run festivals again. Like, it just makes the whole thing feel even better.
Yeah, no, I think it's really inspiring. I think you're kind of like leading the way in helping other companies know that this is possible, right? Like the problem's not insurmountable. We can all do things to make a shift. Yeah. What about you, Dale? Like, what's inspired you? What's led you to? We were talking before the show. You've done like plastic-free July. You live a strict vegan lifestyle. Like you've really personally owned this. What's led you here?
I guess I want to like preface that with just the note that like my upbringing wasn't anything like kind of special. You know, I grew up in just a normal household in suburbia. didn't necessarily have progressive parents, didn't live in kind of a hippie town or anything like that. I really only kind of discovered this, this urge within me to kind of do more and dig a little deeper. Maybe around the year 2016 or so. That's kind of the time I went vegetarian. It's around the time I also, met the architects guys and became aware of this association with Sea Shepherd, and I had a close friend that handed me Sea Shepherd cookbook, and sort of a few of these things kind of aligned at first that really piqued my interest. And I guess for me, like I've always been, like my mentality has always been about like how can I make a positive difference in my own life. And when it came to thinking sustainably and doing what I could to reduce my impact on the planet, like that for me was like a really like, it seems straightforward, there's a lot of things where it's like, oh, how do you put that, how do you contextualize like making a difference? But when it came to actually reducing your impact, like everywhere I looked all of a sudden, and because I'd sort of been curious about it, that was sort of what led me to it. And I think, very much it was that curiosity to see how could I make a difference. And more importantly, like I wanted to live a life that was, with the least amount of exploitation as possible. If I was to ask everyone out there right now, like, would you want to exploit other people? Like, raise your hand. Or if you would want to be exploited, like, raise your hand. Like, no one would want that, but everywhere you look, there's exploitation happening. And I think to reconcile that sort of cognitive dissonance that exists in us all, it's sort of like, there's always more that I feel that can be done, and like I'd love to sort of share the steps that I've taken to actually put that into practice on a individual level where you can actually make a difference, and it doesn't seem like, oh, it's all so overwhelming and it seems so corporate and government level, because there is a lot of stuff when it comes to that where you sort of do feel helpless. But I've found through this journey, little by little, once my eyes were opened, it was like, oh, now you just keep sort of chasing the next thing.
Yeah, you've got a personal politics of doing the least harm possible.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So what are some of those steps that you'd like to share? Like, what are some of the things that you do every day or every week to do the least harm?
I do lead a vegan lifestyle, and that for me feels like the biggest impact that I can have as possible. I also, as you said, only last July, I for the first time participated in Plastic Free July, and that was a really big eye-opener to me as to how much I was kind of ignoring that aspect of sort of, shopping and what I was kind of consuming. It was like, oh, okay, I got the vegan diet sort of thing, that made me feel a little bit assured of myself, but then I realized, oh shit, like how much plastic do I have that's just like going straight into the waste. And I went from, probably having a lot of waste, plastic going into the waste every week, to all of a sudden I'd get to the end of the week and be ready to wheel the bins out. And I'm like, hang on, there's like nothing in here. Like, this feels amazing. And it was just 1 month, and it just changed my entire perspective on the whole thing. And all of a sudden I found myself going through the shopping aisles being like, I have the option of that, it's a little bit more convenient, or I can go the whole food option and just get it in bulk with sort of my own reusable bag or whatever it might be. And I think a really good sort of goal to set with that, even though, because sometimes it is quite impossible to avoid entirely when it comes to certain things, but I read someone else, they're like, every time I shop, I just try and limit the amount of plastic items that I have in a whole trolley to like 2 to 5 items. And I think that's like for a starting point, if you don't want to try and be totally hardcore and get your name, you can at least go that effort of just being like, actually conscious of every item that you pick up off the shelf. And I guess the third thing that I've really adopted lately, and that I'm really passionate about, is regenerative agriculture and organic agriculture and the impact that can have. So, not sort of participating and supporting conventional agriculture, because things like, glyphosate, which is a really toxic carcinogen, is, getting washed into our water supply, and it's water soluble, and that's getting sprayed by the ton on all these crops worldwide. And every time that you don't choose the organic, or even better, the regenerative sort of option, albeit it might be more expensive, but in the long run, I've actually found that my health and that, the overall impact that I'm having it very much balances out. So I think those three things are sort of...
Yeah, no. The personal is political, right? Like your daily choices, if each and every one of us, everyone here, everyone watching this on YouTube, takes a few of the steps that you have talked about, or some of the more structural steps that you've talked about, collectively, that's going to make a really lasting impact on restoring the environment. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. That is very inspiring. How do you stay? I feel a bit overwhelmed sometimes, if I'm honest. And some of you there, I'll read some news article or I'll see something on Instagram and I'm like, another extinct fish or whatever. How do you stay optimistic with it all?
I sort of just like to look at it one step at a time, and I by no means sort of ever intend for this to come across as preach or anything at all. I'm also coming from the perspective of wanting to empower you all to know that you actually can make a difference with these tiny steps that you put into place in your own life. And as I said, I didn't have any particularly special upbringing. There's no reason why I was sort of leaning towards this any more than you would. And you can start today. My journey started with just trying and going vegetarian, and that opened a whole array of, just insights. A really great place to start is jump on Netflix, jump on these streaming sites and watch a few documentaries. A few good ones are like, cowspiracy and seaspiracy when it comes to, animals, and then when it comes to regenerative agriculture, a really great one is Kiss the Ground. You got What the Health when it comes to health.
Earthlings
is a really great one.
A really good one.
So if you need inspiration, head to those spots, and that might spark something inside of you. And then just know that every time you just take one little step, it's just another step in the right direction, and you'll get the hang of it. And you don't need to feel ashamed that you're not doing enough right now, or that you haven't done enough, because you can always, take those steps in the right direction.
Yeah, you don't have to do everything. You just have to do something. Right? I think it can feel overwhelming, like, fuck, I'm gonna fix global warming by myself. But like you say, just sort your trash or choose what you buy, just a little bit. And if more people did something rather than nothing, we're gonna get somewhere.
Think globally, act locally, and
yes.
It adds up just on that point, and I think you absolutely resonate so much with what you said, that it feels like it's an overwhelming task. But actually, when you start making those small changes, you don't have to flip overnight to an entirely extremely environmental lifestyle. But you make small changes, and bit by bit, the more you learn, it grows and it grows. And sometimes it can feel like it's only a small effort, but it's actually having a huge impact. So one of the things that we were talking about before is like doing your beach cleanups. When you go down to the beach, you're collecting the plastic out of the sand and you're recycling it properly because it's obviously there for the wrong reasons. And it can sort of feel like it's a tiny, tiny little bit of effort. But actually, that mass effort, together with Tongaroa Blue, who are an organization who track the plastics, Sea Shepherd doing our cleanups, we actually collected a lot of data around the kind of plastics that we were finding on the beaches from those tiny little events that we were having. And we took that to Parliament, and we managed to push it through a government, and we banned single-use plastics in Victoria. So it can feel like a tiny, we can feel like such a small thing that you're doing, but collectively, we have so much power in what we're choosing to buy and what we do with that time. And you can go down the beach and pick up a bit of plastic and feel like it's nothing, but it can actually snowball into like a huge change for the world. So I think exactly what you said there, those tiny incremental things are huge, and our voice can be huge. Yeah.
So, stepping outside of the individual, you work for an organization, which is a global organization, like it's a globally recognized organization. What is Sea Shepherd focusing on right now?
So Sea Shepherd is a global organization, and we have about 10 ships working offshore at all times, and we have campaigns around the world. So we're currently working offshore in Africa in places like Sao Tome and Gabon, and we're working with the local fishing authorities and the governments, and we're helping them to police their own waters, essentially. So we're providing the vessel and the crew, and then we're taking them offshore to go and board illegal fishing vessels, check what they have in their freezers. Often it's the wrong catch, sharks, things like that. And then we're bringing that to justice. So that's a big campaign. It's called IUU fishing, which is illegal and unregulated and unreported fishing, which is a huge issue. Even in the fish that you buy in the stores, a lot of it is illegally or unreported caught. We've got campaigns in Mexico where we're saving a vaquita porpoise from going extinct. There's less than 10 left in the world, and we're defending that animal in Mexico. We've got campaigns in Europe, so we're stopping a lot of the fishing that happens in Europe off the coast of France. There's a lot of dolphins dying as bycatch in the fish that you get. So yeah, we've got campaigns, there's campaigns in New Zealand, we're defending a dolphin out there, all around the world.
Thank you for defending our dolphins, I appreciate that. Can I ask you a difficult question?
Okay.
So when I think about Mexico, when I think about Africa, there's obviously like an economic component for people who go out and catch those fish, right? Like they might not have the economic choices that we might when it comes to like making a livelihood. Does Sea Shepherd help local communities economically?
100%. So Sea Shepherd will only go after the illegal activity. So in Mexico where we're working, it's actually the cartel are trying to go after a fish, and in catching that fish is killing the porpoise. And the fish's swim bladder is worth more than cocaine on the black market in Asia. So they are all cocaine runners who are now chasing this fish called the totoaba. And so it's all an entirely illegal practice. But there are local fishermen in that area who actually, we support them and they support us, because they don't want this illegal fishing happening in that area, because it's a lot of, all the crime that comes with that activity. So, and in Africa as well, we support the local communities. We're not anti-fishing for sustainability, like if you're trying to just make a livelihood, we're anti-illegal and poaching. That's a very strong thing with Sea Shepherd. We're not anti people just trying to get their living. We're anti the people doing the illegal activities. So we support the local communities, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really nuanced topic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's something we have to be really careful about with our language when we're talking about these things, that we're not, we're not going after your subsistence fishermen, we're going after illegal activity that doesn't need to exist.
That's a good segue for what I want to talk about now. Because when we talk about veganism or environmentalism, there's always some fucking guy on Instagram who's like fucking blah, 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 blah. And like people feel really got at, and it's like a hyper-political space, particularly online where a lot of these things chat. How do we make sure we're bringing people into the kaupapa, into the fold, into the conversation, rather than making like an us and them? Like how do we get people into these things? Because a lot of people are like, fucking vegans, you've all got anemia. Or like, fucking like hippies, or, you know what I mean? Like, how do we get like, the bro who likes watching AFL and sinking tins, and like, how do we get that guy to think about sorting his plastics better? That's what I want to know.
Talks like this, just having you guys having the conversation. But I think kind of like Dale said, like a lot of those documentaries, I think like a lot of those extreme activism documentaries get a bad rap for being like so hardcore. But like Cowspiracy is just a really easy watch. And I think it's all about exposure. And for me, exactly like Dale, like I just lived a normal life. But then when I started to become exposed to some of those things, you realize like how much the extent we're damaging the planet and how easy it is for us to make those changes. So having those like easily accessible information that's not like thrown at your face and like you need to change everything right now or we're all going to die, those small steps that you can make, and packaging it in a way that's kind of getting people on side and not just saying, like you said, the us versus them, like delivering the information in a way that's non-judgmental. Like I'm also vegan, but I'm embarrassed that as much as I love the ocean, scuba diver for years, it took me until my 30s to join the dots between loving the oceans and eating fish, and like, why am I eating these things that I go and pay money to go and see, But that was just about gentle exposure, encouraging conversations. And so now when I meet people who aren't vegan, I'm never judgmental about it, because you've got to get there. You can offer information and you can sort of hold their hand and share with them in a non-judgmental way. But we've got to be careful about not being too aggressive in our activism in that way.
I'm vegetarian, not vegan, but like I'm a strict vegetarian. I've been that for like 20-something years. And for me, it's about I can still be fit and healthy and an athlete. Because a lot of people have these misconceptions that you're going to fall apart because you don't eat steak. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like in our personal lives, we can be like, this is possible, right?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I think going off what Kate said, like it's very much about approaching people from that like loving perspective and sort of just seeing us all breaking down and just knowing that we are all really the same on this planet. We all do fundamentally want the same things. It's just what angle are people coming from, and that's why I definitely like to come from that approach of I'm not going to necessarily try and talk to or preach to anyone that's totally apathetic, because I know I'm probably wasting my time. But I know that everyone here right now that I'm talking to at least has some sort of curiosity and is sort of willing to, hear about these things. So this is a great place to start to get these conversations happening. And yeah, I think, a really great book that I read in recent times was a book called Drawdown, and that really like sort of summed up in my eyes, like an all-round perspective of how you can approach this issue of climate change and reducing our impact on the planet in 100 different ways. So it actually lists the top 100 ways that we can reduce our impact on the planet, and it's all backed by, you know, comprehensive scientific research and studies back to front. And so it's the first time a book has ever done that. So if any of you are curious, definitely go out and pick up that book. It's called Drawdown. It's a really great read, and the ones, you know, the top 10 for me was really surprising. In there was sort of a mixed bag of things, and some of them were at that sort of corporate government level where it was things like wind and solar and things like this. Other important parts that we don't think about are sort of seeking out help and guidance from Indigenous communities across the globe, because when it comes to land management and these kinds of things, you know, they're often the ones that know best what to do, and I think we overlook that aspect very much. One really cool thing was that coming in at number 6 was the education and the empowerment of women across the world would actually vastly reduce the impact on the planet, and that's something you just think, wow, like that's just all the more reason for that to go ahead. At number 3, you know, to prove sort of what I was saying is one of the 3 angles that I'm going for, at number 3 actually was to live a plant-based diet and lifestyle. So that was actually, I wasn't expecting it to be that high, but that came in at number 3 after the proper recycling of refrigeration and wind farming. So, so like there's a multitude of ways you can approach it. I think, you know, if you were to go give the plastic-free month a go, give eating organic a month a go, you know, a month trying a vegetarian diet, or something else, or a combination of all 3. I really think as long as you sort of take that step and just give something a go, it then sort of trickles on and really leads into a whole lot of other pathways that I just think you'll feel better, the people around you will start to feel better. It's just it's a positive kind of impact
Can I just jump in on that?
Yeah.
I absolutely understand what you were saying, and for me personally, in my experience, one of the sweetest things about making all these changes was the impact it had on the people around me. So I wasn't necessarily shouting about it, but like when I stopped using single-use plastic and bringing in like cloth bags to work and reusable cups and stuff like that, all of my colleagues, all of a sudden they were like, they'd come in with a plastic bag and they'd sort of hide it from me, and they'd be like, oh, sorry, I have a plastic bag, but I'll bring my keep cup and my proper bag tomorrow, whatever. And I'm like, I'm not the environmental police, but that's cool. Like, if you feel like you have to change your behaviors because of the way that I'm living my lifestyle, that's awesome. And I think like you were saying, in that gentle approach, like just lead the lifestyle that challenge, deals with all these challenges, and you'll be amazed how far that resonates around you in your community. And people like I know stopped eating fish and stuff because they know I'm part of Sea Shepherd and they want to support me, and that's a beautiful thing. So you can just live that existence, and you'll be amazed how far that impacts around.
It's that whole being the change you want to see in the world, right? And then you are the light that shines, that illuminates some of the issues that people might not have thought about.
Yeah, so much of what we have learned it's like we've got so much education and science now around the impacts that we've had, that I think what you're seeing, like with your friends and stuff, it's like we don't want to exploit naturally in our human bodies and our minds. We actually don't want to have that much impact, but just because of just the development of technology, plastic bags were designed to be practical, and they were for a long time, but now we're educated enough and science has proven that it's actually impacting it. So now we can change those things, and there's so many suitable alternatives out there now. I think that's the biggest change I've seen since starting UNIFY, I guess, is there's so many other ways of doing things that weren't there when we started, and we've only been running like 7 years or 8 years now. And yeah, it's funny just talking about the vegan diet. I am a 5th generation beef farmer. I've started to take over since COVID, not running festivals. I actually went and fixed a lot of fences on the farm, but I have a vegan partner, so we did Plastic Free July, and she's really helping me. Just the people you keep, the friends you keep. I've learned more from her than I have, in my whole life, I guess, and just through the practice. So now it's weird going back to the farm. There's like 3 meals of meat a day, and I'm like, and then normally a week I'll eat it
blocked
twice.
Up? How's the toilet?
Yeah, I'm all like uncomfortable, and it's just like, wow, Mum. But just having those eyes on now, like, and my meat intake's gone. I definitely love meat, and I will keep eating meat, but maybe twice or 3 times a week, not 3 times a day, like bacon, salami, steak every day. It's like, nah, it's too much.
All that processed stuff is not good for you, bro. I think appealing to people's self-interest is a good thing. Like, you will be healthier, not necessarily if you go vegan, but if you do a well-informed vegetarian, plant-based, sometimes vegan diet, if you are mindful about what you're consuming, Do you know what I mean? Like, that's going to make you like spiritually, mentally, and physically healthier. Like, that's a good way to reach people.
Totally. Coming back to the farm and living on the farm, I actually managed to get mum and dad to do a full 2-week vegan, almost raw vegan diet for 2 weeks. And I was like, at the end of it, I was like, do you feel any better? And they're like, no, not really. I was like, come on. But it's that month. It's like, for them, they would never have even had that concept to even try it, let alone. But it's definitely influenced. I know now when I go back, they're not eating as much because it's that.
It's that incremental.
Yeah, I took the
isn't it?
bag
Yeah.
that wasn't a plastic bag. I took the bottle that wasn't a plastic bottle. And people notice. We don't want to impact the environment as much as we do.
Ultimately, I think people want to do the right thing, and almost coming back to what you were saying in the beginning there, Dale, like, we don't want to be a bad person. We don't want to be part of these systems that are, you know, abusing or whatever. And so, like, if you can show in a small way how you can, like, not support those negative systems, then everybody kind of just wants to do the right thing. Like, they're like, oh, I want to save the environment. I'm not going to use plastic bags, but I just maybe didn't know before how bad it was, and now I do. I want to change. I think inherently people do want to do good. They just don't necessarily always know how easy it is to make that change.
I think if I can distill down what you're all saying, it's not about reaching people through their heads with facts and figures. It's about reaching their hearts, right? Like, and that's
100%.
that's how people will change. Like, we are emotional beings, and none of us want to be horrible and cause harm. And if we help people understand that,
I feel like we should have a big group hug now.
we can do that. I love a fucking group hug. But my whole shit is group hugs.
Yeah. We're hugging a bit. Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I think that's a really good point, and I think a big part of that is what makes us feel like what we're doing makes no difference and it's all too overwhelming, I think, is because there is such a disconnect nowadays from how most of us lead our lives and sort of the reality of the situation. I think when you live in city and suburbia, we're so disconnected from the planet and, you know, and sort of how the planet gives us so much that we only sort of see the end product of that total cycle that gets our, you know, our box of cornflakes on the shelf. You know, we don't really see what happens behind closed doors, and I think it's that disconnect that actually disconnects that emotional part and that heart part from the action that we take of, you know, picking the plastic thing or whatever it might be. There's that disconnect there that I think stops us from feeling emotional about this and feeling apathetic towards it, because it's like, oh, well, look around, everyone's doing it, this seems normal. And I think it doesn't take much to actually just reactivate that part of you to sort of, realize that everything around us does ultimately come from the earth.
Did you see that film Avatar?
Yeah, I love
like,
that movie.
We're so
Yeah.
disconnected from...
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
We're in the material world, baby. You know, it's like...
We're like the bad humans invading
it totally
the
is.
Avatar.
It's not
planet.
fiction.
What is that planet called? Does anyone know the planet now? You know when they blow up the tree? Oh shit, that's some heartbreaking shit.
Yeah, it's hard.
That shit fucking put me in a funk for ages.
Yeah. That's
We don't wanna
reality.
be that's reality.
That's not
I don't wanna
fiction.
blow up
That's
any
not science
trees.
fiction at all.